Imagine you're fast asleep on a pretty full Greyhound bus when suddenly you're woken up by a knife. That's what happened on July 30th to a young man, Tim Mclean. This is the Greyhound bus case. And this case has kept me awake at night. I have not stopped thinking about it. If you haven't heard of this case, I'm so sorry in advance for the nightmares you may get. The new fear of public transportation that you may get after this video. It's a lot. And I have seen quite a few big YouTubers that do these type of videos take on this case, but I really wanted to cover it myself because it happened so close to home. Like, Edmonton is an hour away from me, so that just makes it extra scary. But hey guys, it's been a minute since I've done a crime and contour video. A video where I sit down and tell you a true crime story while doing my makeup. So let's just get on into it. Let me just quickly prime my face here. If I'm looking here, it's because my little mirror is here. My setup is not fantastic today. I apologize in advance. Tim Mclean was born on October 3rd, 1985, and he grew up in a small town in Manitoba with his mother Carol, his father Tim, and his little brother Kendall. From a young age, Tim was very active, very outgoing, and always had the itch to go out and explore the world. He was very much a free spirit. His mother would call him her wild child, and his brother described him as very charismatic and had a magnetic personality. He was very spontaneous, down to really do anything, and really loved trying and seeing new things. His favorite thing was to meet new people, and he was loved by everyone. He was the type of person that can walk into a room not knowing anybody, but walk out with a dozen friends. Like, I admire that in people. Like, my dad is one of those people, and I'm jealous. I wish I had the social ability to do that. His interest in adventuring and people led him to a job at the Western Canada Carnival Circuit. Once one carnival wrapped up, he would pick up, move to the next town over to find more work. At the age of 22, after traveling for a few years, he found a place where he really wanted to settle down, and the rugged coastline of BC had stolen his heart by the end of 2018. And I'm not surprised, BC is one of the most beautiful places in Canada. Now, Tim had been working at the Klondike Days in Edmonton, which is so crazy because I've been there. I used to love going to Klondike Days. If you live in Calgary, it's basically like the Calgary Stampede of Edmonton. It's fun. There's rides, there's games, there's shows. It's deep fried food heaven. He then decided he wanted to go to Winnipeg for a while, catch up with his family and friends before moving forward with his plan to move to BC. And sadly, he would never make it there. When his friends offered to get him a plane ticket, he declined and said that he'd prefer to take the Greyhound bus. Again, an adventurous soul. I would take that plane ticket in a heartbeat. So that's what Tim did. He boarded bus 1170 at roughly 12 p.m. He sat down at a window seat near the back of the bus, and it was going to be about a 22-hour ride. So he kind of just got comfortable, put on his headphones, and listened to some music. And at around 6 p.m., the bus made a stop in Erickson, Manitoba, and 40-year-old Chinese immigrant Vincent Lee boarded the bus, and he was traveling from Edmonton, Alberta. Now, who is Vincent Lee? Vince Lee was born on April 30th, 1968. I do not want to butcher this name, so I'm just going to put it on the screen. He was born here in China, where he lived with his parents and his two siblings. Now, I don't know much about his childhood. I know he was born 1 month premature. He didn't have many friends, and he spent most of his time on his phone. At the age of 18, Vince went to university and got a degree in computer programming. And after his graduation, he moved to Beijing to find work. He got a job as a software engineer, and then in 1992, he met his wife, Anna, and they walked down the aisle in 1995. Now we're jumping to 2001. When Vince was 33, him and his wife moved to Canada for a fresh start. They settled in Winnipeg, and everything was going great aside from the fact that Vince could not find a job as a software engineer in Canada, meaning he had to settle for jobs that he didn't like and didn't make him happy. He wasn't thriving. But he still had to support himself and his wife. So he picked up a job at McDonald's, he worked at a few warehouses, he worked at a church for a period of time, and in 2004 he was hospitalized after running into some problems with law enforcement and was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia. And he was prescribed medication that he was told he must take, but he refused. He claimed he did not have this condition. He refused to believe the doctors. And the sad thing is, maybe if he had listened and take the medication that was given to him by the doctors, Tim may still be alive today. This case may have never happened. Now, between the years of 2005 and 2008, Anna and Vince got divorced, but were still living together in Edmonton, Alberta. Because she was very concerned about him. He started acting very strange. He would disappear for weeks at a time. He would talk to himself and said that he was hearing voices in his head. And these voices kept getting louder and louder, telling him that he needed to protect himself from the evil forces and that he was in danger. So what did Vince do? He went out and bought himself a hunting knife. Then on July 28th in 2008, Vince left Anna a note that said, quote, "I'm gone. Don't look for me. I wish you were happy." And then went to buy himself a Greyhound bus ticket. Then the following day, he boards his bus in Edmonton, bus 1170, for his long 24-hour journey ahead of him. And after being on the bus for roughly 18 hours, the voices in his head start getting louder again. They're telling him to get off the bus, that he's in danger. So when the bus stopped at 6 p.m. in Erickson, he got off the bus with 3 pieces of luggage in his hand. Now, once he got off the bus, he realized there's nothing for him in Erickson, so he needs to get back on the bus and continue his journey to Winnipeg. But there wasn't going to be another bus at this stop until 24 hours later. Now, I feel a normal functioning human would go, okay, I gotta figure out a game plan here because I have 24 hours. I need to go find a place to rest my head, maybe find some food to eat. But he just sat there on a bench, staring into space, just sitting there for hours. The very next day, he decides he needs to sell his belongings randomly to anybody that he came across at the bus station. There was this one younger boy that came along, 15 years old, and he offered him $60 for his laptop. And Vince went, sure. Sold him the laptop for $60. What? And anything that he could not sell, he burned on the side of the street. I don't understand. And that brings us back to where we left off, Vince stepping onto the 1170 Greyhound bus, taking a seat at the very front. Then about an hour later, the bus made a rest stop for everybody to get out, stretch their legs, get some fresh air, go to the bathroom, and everybody got back on board. When Vince got back onto the bus, he started making his way towards the back, slowly walking down the aisle, making eye contact with everybody he passed by. Tim was seated at the second row from the back, and the seat next to him, to his left, was empty. When Vince made eye contact with Tim, Tim flashed him a friendly smile and kind of gestured that he's welcome to sit next to him. So he sat down next to Tim, and Tim put on his headphones, put his head up against the window, and drifted off to sleep. At first, Vince wasn't showing any alarming behavior. He was kind of just keeping to himself. He was quiet, didn't come off as a threat of any sort. That was until someone across the aisle from him noticed a shift in his demeanor. He began to fidget and mutter in a different language, which came off as a little strange, but again, he wasn't harming anybody. That was up until he pulled out the large Bowie knife. I'm not sure how you say it. He pulled it out and quickly stabbed Tim in the neck, who was fast asleep but was now awakened in a screaming panic. He tried to fight back. There was defense wounds, but Vince was just continuously stabbing him as if he was on autopilot, completely unfazed. The first person to realize what was happening was 26-year-old Garnett, and he was sitting in the row in front of them. So he turned around to see what was happening, and he yelled out, "Knife, get off the bus." And of course, everybody started panicking, and there was just complete chaos on the bus. People were yelling at the bus driver to stop. They were throwing themselves towards the front of the bus to get out of the doors. And Vince had pulled Tim to the floor and continued to stab him, showing no mercy. The bus driver then brought the bus to an emergency stop, and everybody threw themselves out of the exit doors aside from the bus driver and 2 others who were trying to save Tim. But whenever they would try to get near Vince, he would just start waving around his bloody knife, and they got off the bus as well for their own safety. Now, it was believed at this point that Tim was gone, and I pray that he was, because it just gets drastically worse from here on out. As the people that were once on their merry way on the Greyhound bus were all standing outside on the highway, they could see the horrors taking place inside the bus through the windows. With the large knife he had just stabbed Tim an insane amount of times, Vince began to saw at Tim's lifeless body's neck. I can't even do my eyeliner while I talk about this. He then stood up, and in one hand had his bloody hunting knife, and in the other, Tim's head. He completely beheaded him. Could you imagine how traumatic that would be? Seeing that with your own eyes. And a trucker that was passing by stopped to help all of the terrified people outside of the bus and provided them crowbars and hammers to defend themselves. Sorry guys, I could not for the life of me do my eyeliner on camera while telling this story. Was not gonna happen. But Vince started making his way towards the front of the bus. So the bus driver, the truck driver, and a passenger ran over to block the doors to make sure that he wasn't getting off that bus. And something like straight out of a movie scene, Vince's hand went through the door and started waving the knife around. Could you imagine? This is what happens in movies. I would pee my pants. That's not even like a joke. I would pee my pants. And while all the people gathered on the highway were eagerly waiting for the police to show up, Vince's actions just got increasingly worse. You think it couldn't get worse? It does. He cut up Tim's chest and started pulling out his organs. He took out his heart, his lungs, his liver, his intestines, and started hanging them around the bus for everybody to see. But he didn't stop there. Vince Lee, I hope you're not eating anything right now. Vince Lee ate his eyeballs, Tim's eyeballs, and a third of his heart. What? I can't even imagine hearing this like happen to somebody that I love. Anybody in general, but like, could you imagine his mother? He cut off his nose and ears and started smelling the parts and licking his bloody fingers. He even brought plastic bags with him to store these parts. He planned to take bits of the victim with him. There's a special place in hell for people like this. At around 9 p.m., emergency services finally arrive and instantly contaminated the scene and started talking to Vince. They tried to reason with him, tried to persuade him to turn himself in, but nothing was working. Their attempts failed, and he had stated very loudly, "I am staying on this bus forever." Okay, Vince. Okay. And then continued to dismember Tim's lifeless body. 4 hours, which honestly like makes me quite mad. Like, could we not get a ton of people to like take down one man? I don't understand why this went on for hours. Like, I get it that Tim is like completely gone at this point. There's no saving him. This is just such a traumatizing experience for everybody like seeing this. I can't even imagine. And at about 1:30 a.m. with the police getting absolutely nowhere, Vince decides to make a run for it out of the back window exit, but was met with a good old police taser. The crime scene was then analyzed and all the traumatized passengers were questioned. Tim's ears, nose, and tongue were found in Vince's pockets. What were you planning to do with that later? This whole case just makes me go, why? Vince was taken to the hospital to treat his injuries that he got from attacking Tim, and at 3:30 p.m. the next day, all the passengers arrived in Winnipeg. Carol, Tim's mother, was informed by her ex-husband that Tim was not going to be coming home that day. I'm gonna cry. It was reported that she found out that night on the radio and prayed over dinner for that family, not knowing that it was in fact her son that this had happened to. It's so sad, dude. She prayed that it wasn't her son. That rips me apart. Now get this, Vince Lee claims that he is not criminally responsible because he's mentally ill. And in court, the judge relied on testimonies from people that weren't even at the scene. How is that even allowed? They were never even there to witness the horrors that went on that night. Sorry guys, my camera died, so we switched cameras and we're back in business. So the judge ruled Vince Lee criminally not responsible due to psychosis caused by schizophrenia, and he was sent to a mental health center for treatment and monitoring. Experts started working with Vince, taking many videos and kept transcripts, and interviewing him took place on July 30th. He said, quote, "God made me do it. I was the evil son of an evil God. God chose me as the killer. God chose Tim as the victim." Now jumping to June 2010, 1.3 years after the whole trial happened, Vince Lee started unsupervised release, and then 2 years later in 2012 could go completely unsupervised for short periods of time. Then a couple years later in 2015, he lived in a halfway house where the only thing being controlled were his meds. And this part gets me so heated. In 2017, February 10th to be exact, the man who beheaded an innocent young man, ate his eyeballs, tore out his organs, and displayed them for all to see, was declared fully stable and able to function out in the world. That don't make no sense to me. Like, is that not madness? A free man. Changed his name, is now walking around like nothing happened, like he didn't have a human tongue in his pocket. My heart goes out to the family and everyone needing therapy sessions after this. It really breaks my heart that they never got to say goodbye to their son, like in so many other cases out there. There is evil in this world, that's for sure. Another sad thing, 5 months after this whole incident, Tim's son was born. He does have a baby out in this world. Just so sad that you'll never get to meet him. In heaven. You'll meet him in heaven. He was taken way too soon. He was so young. Younger than me, that's crazy. I feel like a baby. But that's the Greyhound bus case, the story of Tim Mclean. It's a crazy one, isn't it? I told you, I warned you. But thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah, mwah. Bye!